The grand halls of the Habsburg Empire, those glittering palaces of Vienna and Prague, seemed to hum with the echoes of centuries of power, tradition, and strict courtly ritual. Emperors and empresses, their faces etched into history, popes made decisions that shaped a continent. But what if the forces truly pulling the strings, the whispers, guiding imperial hands, lurked not in plain sight, but deep in the shadows? What if the destiny of millions was shaped by secret handshakes, hushed meetings, and hidden agendas just beneath the surface of the Gilded Age? Prepare to uncover the 7 covert cabals that left their mysterious mark on the mighty Habsburg dynasty. Number 7. The Asiatic Brethren. The late 18th century was a time of swirling ideas. The Enlightenment pushed for reason and progress, but beneath this rational surface a potent undercurrent of mysticism, alchemy, and Kabbalah flowed. This was the world that gave birth to the Asiatic Brethren, or more formally, the Knights and Brothers of St. John the Evangelist from Asia in Europe. It was a fascinating, often contradictory secret society that combined elements of Rosicrucianism, Kabbalah, and a deep interest in ancient Egyptian and Eastern wisdom. Unlike some other groups that focused purely on political reform or philosophical debate, the Asiatic Brethren aimed for a blend of spiritual enlightenment and practical. They sought to understand the hidden mechanics of the universe, believing that true power came from mastering these esoteric secrets. Their origins trace back to figures like Hans Heinrich von Ecker und Eckhoffen and Baron Franz Thomas von Schoenfeld. These were men of means and education, not content with the conventional paths of power. They believed they held the keys to ancient knowledge, passed down through a lineage of unknown superiors. This concept of unknown superiors was a common and intriguing element in many secret societies of the era. It gave members a sense of being part of something far greater and more ancient than themselves, guided by an unseen hand. The Brethren's rituals were elaborate, steeped in symbolism, drawn from various mystical traditions. Members progressed through a series of grades, each revealing deeper layers of occult wisdom and spiritual insight. They were particularly interested in the secrets of creation, the nature of God, and the pursuit of spiritual perfection. The appeal of the Asiatic Brethren was particularly strong among the German and Austrian nobility, intellectuals, and military officers. These were individuals who, while often part of the established order, felt a yearning for something more, a deeper truth, beyond the pomp and circumstance of court life. They were drawn to the promise of hidden knowledge, the sense of belonging to an exclusive circle, and the opportunity to interact with like-minded individuals outside the rigid social structures. For many, it offered a new kind of power, a power derived from knowledge rather than birthright. They held their meetings in hushed tones, in private residences, away from the prying eyes of imperial censors and the curious whispers of court gossips. The very secrecy added to the allure, creating an air of intrigue and forbidden knowledge. One could easily imagine a young ambitious Habsburg courtier, perhaps a nephew of a minor duke, or a rising star in the imperial administration, stumbling upon the existence of the Asiatic Brethren. He might be disillusioned with the slow pace of reform, frustrated by the endless red tape of the Hofburg, and eager for a more direct path to influence. The promise of ancient wisdom and a network of powerful, enlightened individuals would be irresistible. He might be initiated into the lowest ranks, slowly learning the intricate rituals, deciphering the cryptic symbols, and engaging in profound philosophical discussions late into the night. His new brothers would include seasoned diplomats, respected professors from the University of Vienna, and even military commanders who spoke in veiled terms of their shared purpose. The Asiatic Brethren, through their members, subtly injected their ideas into the fabric of imperial society. While they may not have directly dictated grand policy decisions, their influence was felt in the intellectual currents of the time. Members discussed new educational theories, the benefits of religious tolerance, and the concept of an enlightened absolutism. Long before these ideas fully took hold in the imperial court, They debated how best to guide society towards a more rational and spiritual future, believing that through their hidden work, they could shape the minds of future leaders. A court advisor who was a member might, in a private conversation with an archduke, gently steer the discussion towards a progressive reform that mirrored the Brethren's ideals. A general, upon returning from a secret meeting, might approach his superiors with a revised strategy that, unbeknownst to them, contained esoteric circle. The Habsburg Emperor, Joseph II, known for his radical reforms and his embrace of Enlightenment ideals, often found himself grappling with the rise of these secret societies. While he was himself a Freemason and often sympathetic to the reformist impulses of such groups, he also recognized the potential for disciplization. He sought to control them, to bring them under the watchful eye of the state, rather than allowing them to operate completely unfettered. The Asiatic Brethren, with their deeply mystical and sometimes politically ambiguous agenda, represented a particular challenge. Their blend of spiritual quest and social engineering made them difficult to categorize and thus difficult to control. The Imperial Secret Police certainly kept dossiers on suspected members, fearing their clandestine networks. The very existence of the Asiatic Brethren, even if their direct influence on imperial policy was indirect, contributed to the intellectual and spiritual ferment of the late Habsburg period. They embodied the era's complex dance between reason and mysticism, between outward conformity and inner rebellion. Their members, scattered throughout the Habsburg lands in government offices, university lecture halls, and military barracks, carried with them a shared understanding, a secret bond that transcended social status. They believed they were quietly ushering in a new age, a golden age guided by hidden wisdom. The archives of the imperial court might not contain explicit decrees signed under the influence of the Asiatic Brethren, but the subtle shifts in intellectual discourse, the quiet adoption of new ideas, and the pervasive atmosphere of intrigue certainly bear their invisible mark. The story of the Asiatic Brethren is a reminder that sometimes the greatest influences are the ones that never openly declare themselves, instead weaving their threads through the hidden patterns of society. Their legacy lies not in overt acts, but in the persistent whispers of a world striving for a different kind of enlightenment, a secret wisdom applied to the grand chessboard of imperial power. Number 6. Alchemical and hermetic circles. Imagine Prague in the late 16th century, a city cloaked in mist and mystery. Its cobbled streets and ancient houses buzzed, not just with merchants and monks, but with a different kind of seeker. Alchemists, astrologers, and magi. At the heart of this mystical ferment sat the Habsburg Emperor, Rudolf II, a monarch unlike any other. Rudolf was not interested in endless wars or political intrigue as much as he was captivated by the secrets of the universe, the transmutation of base metals into gold, and the search for the philosopher's stone. His court in Prague became a magnet for every alchemist, charlatan, and genuine scholar of the occult. Across Europe, this fascination cultivated powerful alchemical and hermetic circles that directly influenced imperial decisions. Rudolf II's personal passions shaped his court, and by extension, parts of the empire. He spent vast sums of money bringing the most renowned alchemists to his golden lane, providing them with lavish laboratories, funding their experiments, and listening intently to their often cryptic pronouncements. He was obsessed with gaining hidden knowledge, believing that ancient texts and alchemical processes held the key to true power and even immortality. This wasn't just a passing hobby. It was a driving force behind many of his imperial decisions. He sought the philosopher's stone not only for its promise of wealth, but for its alleged ability to perfect all things, including the health of his realm and his own fragile constitution. Figures like John Dee, the famous English mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, and occultist, and his associate Edward Kelly spent years at Rudolf's court. They were not merely entertainers, they were advisors. Dee claimed to communicate with angels through scrying, and Kelly, a self-proclaimed medium, often relayed these angelic messages to the emperor. Rudolf took these communications seriously, basing decisions on the prophecies and insights he received. One might picture a tense evening meeting in Rudolf's private chambers, where Kelly, perhaps in a trance-like state, would relay a message from an angelic realm about a political alliance or the timing of a military campaign. The emperor, pale and anxious, would absorb every word, pondering its hidden meaning for his empire. His traditional advisors, perhaps less enchanted by the occult, would stand by frustrated by the influence of these mystical figures. Another significant figure was Michael Sendivogius, a Polish alchemist who gained Rudolf's favor and impressed the emperor with his claims of possessing a part of the philosopher's stone. Rudolf's court was a melting pot of such individuals, all vying for imperial patronage, all promising breakthroughs that would solidify Rudolf's power and prestige. These alchemists and hermetic philosophers were not operating in secret societies with formal structures like the Freemasons, but rather formed informal, yet incredibly influential circles. Their secret lay in their esoteric knowledge, which they guarded fiercely, sharing it only with those they deemed worthy or those who could fund their elaborate experiments. The influence of these circles was profound. Rudolf's foreign policy was at times guided by astrological predictions rather than purely legal considerations. His health, which was often poor, was managed by court physicians who blended traditional medicine with alchemical remedies and astrological insights. His isolation from his Catholic relatives and his fascination with mystical pursuits contributed to the growing political instability within the empire. While his cousins and brothers were focused on solidifying Catholic power and fighting the Reformation, Rudolf retreated into his hermetic studies, surrounded by his alchemists and his vast collections. This detachment from conventional governance was a direct consequence of his immersion in these circles. Consider the emperor's pursuit of wealth. Rudolf was constantly in need of funds, and the promise of creating gold through alchemy was a powerful draw. He would invest heavily in alchemical laboratories and experiments, hoping for a breakthrough that would replenish his coffers without resorting to unpopular taxes. This led to a constant stream of alchemists arriving in Prague, each with their own secret formulas and grand promises. Many were charlatans, but some, like Sendivogius, were genuinely learned individuals who pursued what was then considered cutting-edge natural philosophy. The imperial treasury, one might argue, suffered directly from these vast expenditures on alchemical pursuit. The court of Rudolf II also became a center for the study of Kabbalah and Christian mysticism. Philosophers and scholars like Johannes Reuchlin and Agrippa von Nettesheim, though preceding Rudolf, laid intellectual groundwork for the kind of studies pursued at his court. These mystical traditions, which sought to uncover hidden meanings in sacred texts and understand divine creation, resonated deeply with Rudolf's quest for ultimate knowledge. He sponsored translations of ancient Hermetic texts, creating a unique intellectual atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the more dogmatic religious environment elsewhere in Europe. This openness, however, also drew suspicion from the more conservative Catholic elements of the Habsburg court and the broader European powers. The story of Rudolf II and his alchemical and hermetic circles illustrates how deeply personal beliefs and esoteric fascinations can penetrate the highest levels of power. His reign was marked by a decline in political stability, often attributed to his reclusive nature and his unconventional pursuits. Yet it was also a golden age for art, science, and the occult. The very fabric of Prague, even today, seems to whisper tales of those hidden laboratories and the fervent quest for the philosopher's stone. The influence of these secret alchemical circles was not about grand political conspiracies in the traditional sense, but about the profound impact of esoteric knowledge and personal obsession on the decisions of a powerful emperor, shaping the destiny of his empire in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Number 5. The Order of the Golden Fleece. At first glance, the Order of the Golden Fleece seems to be the least secret of all the societies on this list. It was and still is one of Europe's most prestigious chivalric orders, founded in 1430 by Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy. Its members are the cream of European nobility, heads of state and Catholic royalty. Its elaborate ceremonies, magnificent regalia, and long history are all matters of public record. Yet for centuries, the Order of the Golden Fleece functioned as an incredibly exclusive, influential, and often discreet network that shaped the destiny of the Habsburg Empire from within. Its power lay not in hidden rituals, but in its unparalleled exclusivity, its intricate web of loyalty, and its role as a supreme arbiter among the elite. The Habsburgs inherited the grand mastership of the order after the marriage of Maximilian I to Mary of Burgundy in 1477. From that point on, every Habsburg monarch was the sovereign of the order, personally selecting its members. To be granted the Golden Fleece was the ultimate mark of imperial favor, a sign of unwavering loyalty to the crown, and a recognition of supreme aristocratic standing. Members were bound by an oath of loyalty to the sovereign and to the order's statutes, which emphasized honor, chivalry, and the defense of the Catholic faith. This created an inner circle, a brotherhood of the most powerful men in the empire and beyond, who shared a common bond and a commitment to certain ideals. This exclusive network acted as a powerful, unspoken force. Within the Habsburg court, the most influential ministers, the most successful generals, the most cunning diplomats, they were all, almost without exception, Knights of the Golden Fleece. When the emperor needed advice on a crucial matter, he often turned to his fellow knights, not just because of their official positions, but because of their shared membership in the order. Meetings of the order, even if formally about the election of new knights or discussions of heraldry, were also opportunities for the emperor to gauge the loyalty of his most powerful subjects, to sound out opinions, and to subtly direct policy through informal discussions among this trusted elite. Consider the role of Prince Eugene of Savoy, one of the greatest military commanders in Habsburg history. He was a Knight of the Golden Fleece, and this membership cemented his place at the apex of imperial power. His loyalty, despite occasional disagreements with the emperor, was unquestioned, partly due to the sacred bond of the order. The informal discussions held before or after the formal chapters of the Fleece would have been crucial for coordinating military strategies, raising funds for campaigns, or negotiating peace treaties. Decisions that would affect millions were often first aired in these intimate gatherings of the order's highest-ranking members. The order also served as a unique internal court of justice for its members. Knights could only be judged by their peers within the order, providing a layer of protection and a system of accountability distinct from the public legal system. This meant that even powerful aristocrats who might defy imperial directives in public often felt bound by the unspoken rules and judgments of the order's leadership. It created a subtle but effective mechanism for maintaining discipline and cohesion among the Habsburg elite. Disputes between powerful families which could otherwise destabilize the court were sometimes mediated or resolved within the framework of the Golden Fleece, away from public scrutiny. When the Habsburg monarchy faced its gravest crises, such as the War of the Austrian Succession, under Maria Theresa, the loyalty of the Knights of the Golden Fleece was paramount. Many of them commanded their own regiments, held vast estates, and influenced entire regions. Their commitment to Maria Theresa, often formalized through their oath to the order, was critical in rallying support and preventing the empire from fragmenting. The order's shared ethos provided a bedrock of unity at a time when the monarchy's survival was uncertain. The very rituals of the order, though publicly known, were performed in exclusive settings, often within the Hofburg's most sacred chapels. The investiture ceremonies, the annual chapters, and the strict protocols created a sense of shared purpose and identity that transcended mere political allegiance. Members were reminded of their sacred duties, their commitment to the crown, and their role as guardians of a venerable tradition. This continuous reinforcement of loyalty and shared values, enacted through solemn ritual, had a profound psychological effect on the Habsburg elite. Even during the tumultuous 18th century, as Enlightenment ideas challenged traditional hierarchies, the Order of the Golden Fleece retained its power. While some progressive thinkers might have seen it as an antiquated relic, its members were still the people who ran the empire. Emperor Joseph II, despite his radical reforms and his attempts to curb aristocratic privilege, never abolished the Order of the Golden Fleece. He understood its utility as a tool for unifying the powerful and ensuring their loyalty. Even if he sometimes chafed at its traditionalism, he himself, as Grand Master, used it to reward loyal service and to bind his most important subjects to his reforms. The Order's secrecy was not about hidden rituals in dark basements, but about the unspoken codes, the network of mutual obligation, and the private discussions that shaped decisions behind the gilded doors of the court. It was a society of the powerful for the powerful, designed to maintain cohesion and ensure the continued dominance of the Habsburg dynasty. Its influence was constant, pervasive, and often invisible to those outside its exclusive circle, making it a truly formidable and subtle force in imperial history. The Golden Fleece was the ultimate embodiment of a powerful, discrete network, operating at the very pinnacle of the Habsburg world. Number 4. Jesuits. The Society of Jesus, founded by Ignatius Loyola in the 16th century, was never technically a secret society in the way one might think of the Illuminati or Rosicrucians. They were a recognized Catholic order devoted to education, missionary work, and serving the Pope. Yet their incredible influence, their highly disciplined structure, and their reputation for strategic cunning often led them to be perceived as a powerful clandestine force operating behind the scenes, pulling strings in the highest courts of Europe, especially the devoutly Catholic Habsburg monarchy. Their influence was so pervasive and so deeply intertwined with the Habsburg dynasty. From the Counter-Reformation onwards, the Jesuits became the intellectual and spiritual backbone of the Habsburg Empire. Emperor Ferdinand II, a staunch Catholic, famously declared that he would rather rule over a desert than over a land of heretics. He entrusted the Jesuits with the education of his children and the recatholicization of his lands. They founded prestigious colleges and universities across the empire, from Vienna to Prague, from Graz to Innsbruck. These institutions became nurseries for the future administrators, diplomats, and even military leaders of the Habsburg realm. The minds of generations of Habsburg royalty and nobility were shaped by Jesuit teachers and confessors. Consider the young Maria Theresa. Her deep piety and unshakable Catholic faith, which guided much of her reign, were heavily influenced by her Jesuit upbringing. Her confessor, Father Antonius, was a trusted advisor, not just on matters of faith, but also on political and moral dilemmas. He would have had intimate access to the Empress, guiding her thoughts subtly, influencing her decisions through spiritual counsel. It is not hard to imagine a scene where Maria Theresa, wrestling with a difficult diplomatic choice or a contentious internal reform, would seek the quiet counsel of her Jesuit confessor, whose advice, steeped in Jesuit principles of moral fortitude and strategic thinking, would inevitably shape her path. The Jesuits acted as a powerful intelligence network for the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy. Their global reach, their intellectual prowess, and their unwavering loyalty to the Pope gave them access to informations and influence that few other organizations possessed. Their connections stretched across borders, allowing them to gather intelligence on Protestant movements, political intrigues, and emerging threats. This information, often relayed discreetly through their own channels, would undoubtedly have been shared with their Habsburg patrons, providing crucial insights for imperial policy. The peak of Jesuit influence on the Habsburgs came during the reigns of Ferdinand II and Leopold I, where they essentially served as the monarchy's intellectual and spiritual vanguard against Protestantism and the Ottoman Empire. They were instrumental in shaping the very identity of the empire as the bulwark of Catholic Europe. Their universities produced loyal bureaucrats, their churches preached devotion to the emperor and God, and their missionaries worked to reconvert Protestant populations. However, the Jesuits' very success and power made them enemies. By the mid-18th century, with the rise of Enlightenment, thought and growing secularization, many European monarchs, including some Habsburgs, began to chafe under their perceived influence. They were seen by some as an obstacle to state control, a state within a state, too loyal to Rome and too powerful in their educational monopoly. Joseph II, Maria Theresa's son and a leading enlightened absolutist, viewed their traditionalism and their global reach with suspicion. He sought to bring all institutions, including the Church, under state control. The pressure on the Jesuits culminated in their suppression by Pope Clement XIV in 1773, largely due to the immense pressure from the Bourbon courts of France, Spain, and Naples. Maria Theresa, despite her personal devotion to the order, reluctantly acceded to the suppression within her own lands. This was a monumental decision, trudging the complex dance between traditional faith and modern statecraft within the Habsburg Empire. The removal of the Jesuits from their schools and positions of influence left a significant void which the state then sought to fill. Even in their downfall, their influence was profound, forcing a reshaping of the educational and administrative apparatus of the empire. Yet their story did not end there. After their restoration by Pope Pius VII in 1814, the Jesuits slowly began to regain their influence. By the mid-19th century, in the conservative climate following the Napoleonic Wars and the revolutions of 1848, they once again found favor with the Habsburgs, particularly Emperor Francis Joseph. They returned to their educational roles, continuing to shape the minds of the elite. Their long history of deep involvement in Habsburg affairs, sometimes as open advisors, sometimes as perceived manipulators, shows how a powerful, disciplined organization, even without secret oaths or hidden symbols, can exert a profound and continuous influence on a ruling dynasty. Their presence in the imperial court was a constant source of both strength and suspicion, leaving an undeniable mark on the very soul of the Habsburg Empire. Number 3. Rosicrucians. The Rosicrucians are perhaps one of the most enigmatic and truly secret societies on this list, appearing as if from nowhere in the early 17th century. Their emergence was heralded by a series of anonymous manifestos published across Europe, the Fama Fraternitatis (RC) and the Confessio Fraternitatis, followed by the canonical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. These texts spoke of a hidden brotherhood founded by a legendary figure named Christian Rosenkreuz, who had traveled the world acquiring esoteric wisdom. They promised a universal reformation of mankind, a synthesis of science, religion, and art, and a path to spiritual enlightenment through hidden knowledge. This sudden, mysterious appearance caused a sensation, sparking intense debate and a fervent search for the elusive Brothers of the Rosy Cross. Unlike the formal structures of the Jesuits or the public nature of the Golden Fleece, the Rosicrucians were never a large formalized organization with known meeting places or membership rosters. Their influence was primarily intellectual and spiritual, disseminated through allegorical texts, symbols, and a network of individuals who shared a common interest in Hermeticism, alchemy, Kabbalah, and Christian mysticism. They represented a powerful intellectual undercurrent that challenged the rigid dogma of both the Catholic and Protestant churches, hinting at a deeper hidden truth, accessible only to the initiated. The Habsburg Empire, particularly during the late 16th and early 17th centuries, provided fertile ground for Rosicrucian ideas. Emperor Rudolf II, as discussed earlier, had already created a court steeped in alchemy and mysticism in Prague. While there is no direct evidence of Rudolf II himself being a Rosicrucian, in the formal sense his court was a magnet for the kinds of scholars and thinkers who would have been deeply sympathetic to, or even involved in, early Rosicrucian thought. Figures like Michael Meyer, a renowned physician, alchemist, and Rosicrucian apologist, spent time in Prague and was connected to the imperial court. His writings often invoked Rosicrucian themes, subtly disseminating their ideas into the intellectual circles surrounding the emperor. The Rosicrucian appeal to a universal reformation resonated with many who were weary of the religious wars and intellectual stagnation of the era. They offered a vision of progress through hidden wisdom, believing that true societal advancement came not from political revolutions, but from individual spiritual transformation. This subtle messaging would have seeped into the minds of imperial advisors, court physicians, and scholars working in the Habsburg territories. An enlightened minister faced with the challenges of governing a diverse and often fractious empire might find solace and direction in the Rosicrucian emphasis on harmony, balance, and the hidden order of the cosmos. One might imagine a quiet, scholarly physician at the Hofburg, perhaps a man of deep learning but reserved demeanor. He would attend the emperor's lectures on anatomy and natural philosophy, but also retreat to his private library, where forbidden texts on Hermeticism and the latest Rosicrucian pamphlets lay hidden among medical tomes. He might not openly declare himself a Rosicrucian, but his advice to the emperor on matters of health, or even his quiet discussions with younger courtiers on the nature of knowledge, would be subtly infused with Rosicrucian principles. He might advocate for less dogmatic approaches to education or suggest scientific inquiries that align with the Rosicrucian quest for universal knowledge. The Rosicrucians' influence was rarely direct policy intervention. Instead, it was a subtle shaping of the intellectual climate. They fostered a spirit of inquiry, encouraged the pursuit of hidden knowledge, and promoted the idea that there was a divine underlying order to the world that could be understood through esoteric study. This resonated with the era's fascination with cabinets of curiosities, scientific instruments, and the burgeoning fields of astronomy and medicine. While not leading to specific laws, these ideas certainly influenced the worldview of some Habsburg officials and intellectuals, making them more open to new scientific discoveries, or more tolerant of diverse philosophical viewpoints, even if secretly. During the reigns of later Habsburgs, as the Enlightenment took hold, the Rosicrucian current continued, often merging with or influencing other secret societies like Freemasonry. Many early Freemasons, particularly within the German lodges, incorporated Rosicrucian symbols and ideas into their rituals and philosophy, creating a lineage that flowed into the 18th century. The idea of hidden masters, guiding humanity of secret knowledge passed down through generations, became a powerful and enduring motif. The fear of such unknown, invisible influences also played a role. Governments, including the Habsburgs, often viewed secret societies with suspicion, especially those that hinted at hidden power or sought to reform society outside official channels. The very elusiveness of the Rosicrucians made them an object of both fascination and apprehension. They were often blamed for revolutionary ideas even when they advocated for spiritual rather than political change. This perception, whether accurate or not, influenced how the Habsburg authorities dealt with intellectual and religious dissent. The Rosicrucian mark on the Habsburg Empire is not found in grand declarations or public pronouncements. It resides in the subtle shifts in intellectual curiosity, the quiet pursuit of esoteric knowledge among the educated elite, and the pervasive whispers of a hidden guiding hand, seeking a better world through spiritual revelation. Their legacy is one of silent influence, of ideas permeating the atmosphere, leaving an invisible yet persistent impression on the minds of those who governed. Number 2. Illuminati. The name Illuminati still conjures images of shadowy conspiracies and hidden power. And founded in Bavaria in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, a professor of canon law, the Order of the Illuminati was a truly radical secret society for its time. It was born out of the Enlightenment, advocating for reason, secularism, republicanism, and the abolition of hereditary monarchy, private property, and religion. Its aim was to infiltrate and influence positions of power, replacing what Weishaupt saw as the oppressive forces of state and church with an enlightened, rational elite. For a traditional Catholic and deeply monarchical power like the Habsburg Empire, the Illuminati represented an existential threat. The Illuminati operated with extreme secrecy, adopting a hierarchical structure inspired by the Jesuits. Even though they despised the Catholic Church, members progressed through various grades, each revealing more of the order's true radical agenda. They used code names, secret signs, and elaborate rituals to maintain their anonymity and avoid detection. Weishaupt's strategy was to attract promising young men from the aristocracy, intellectual circles, and the burgeoning middle class, particularly those who were already Freemasons, as Freemasonry provided a ready network for recruitment. They sought to place their members in key positions within government, education, and the church, subtly influencing policy from within. While the Illuminati were short-lived, effectively suppressed in Bavaria by 1785, the fear of their influence was immense and widespread across Europe, especially in the Habsburg domains. Their alleged plots to overthrow governments and undermine religion became a convenient scapegoat for any form of radicalism or perceived disloyalty. The wave of panic that followed their exposure resonated deeply within the cautious and conservative Habsburg court, which was always vigilant against anything that threatened its absolute power and Catholic foundation. There is no definitive proof that any Habsburg monarch was a member of the Illuminati. However, the anxieties surrounding their existence directly influenced Habsburg policy regarding freedom of thought, assembly, and censorship. Emperor Leopold II, who reigned after his reformist brother Joseph II, issued strict decrees against secret societies, including Freemasonry, precisely because of the pervasive fear of Illuminati infiltration. His successor, Francis I, intensified these crackdowns, viewing any form of clandestine association as a potential hotbed of revolution. The very concept of Illuminati became synonymous with dangerous subversive ideas in the Habsburg imagination. One could imagine a scene in the Habsburg Imperial Council in Vienna. Reports would arrive from Bavaria or other German states detailing the alleged activities of the Illuminati, their recruitment of high-ranking officials, their plans to spread Republican ideas, their supposed blasphemies against the Church. The ministers, their faces grim, would discuss measures to prevent such contamination from reaching the serene confines of the Hofburg. The Imperial Secret Police would redouble their efforts, spying on intellectual salons, monitoring universities, and scrutinizing any gathering that seemed too philosophical or too critical. Any suspected member, even a minor courtier, would face intense scrutiny, their career prospects ruined. The policies of Joseph II, with his radical reforms aimed at centralizing power, curbing the church, and promoting religious tolerance, were often attributed to Illuminati, influenced by his conservative critics, even though he pursued them independently from the order. His rationalist approach and his challenges to traditional authority made him appear in the eyes of fearful conservatives to be acting in concert with the very forces that the Illuminati championed. This perception, whether true or not, fueled the paranoia and made life difficult for genuine reformers who simply believed in enlightenment ideals. The suppression of the Illuminati led to a general climate of suspicion against all secret societies, including those like the Freemasons, who were often much less radical in their aims. This crackdown had a chilling effect on intellectual life in the Habsburg territories, stifling open debate and pushing dissenting opinions further underground. It led to a more centralized and repressive state apparatus under Francis I, designed to root out any perceived revolutionary threat, including those imagined to be orchestrated by the Illuminati. The story of the Illuminati in the Habsburg court is less about direct control and more about the profound impact of fear. The perceived threat of this radical society shaped imperial policy on censorship, public assembly, and control over intellectual life for decades. The whispers of Illuminati plots justified increased surveillance and a more authoritarian approach to governance. While their actual historical influence might have been limited by their short lifespan, their mythical influence, the idea of a hidden malevolent force seeking to dismantle the old order, cast a long and dark shadow over the Habsburg Empire, profoundly shaping its defensive posture against the winds of revolutionary change. The legacy of the Illuminati in the Habsburg world is the chilling story of how an idea, a perceived enemy, can become a more powerful force than any actual organization. Number 1. Freemasons. Of all the secret societies to influence the Habsburg court, Freemasonry stands out as perhaps the most pervasive and complex. Emerging from the medieval guilds of stonemasons, Freemasonry evolved into a fraternal organization dedicated to moral improvement, enlightenment ideals, and a universal brotherhood of man. By the 18th century, it had spread rapidly across Europe, attracting royalty, nobility, intellectuals, and merchants. Its lodges became salons for intellectual exchange, fostering discussions on philosophy, science, religious tolerance, and political reform. For the Habsburgs, this presented both an opportunity and a profound challenge. Many prominent figures in the Enlightenment, including leading lights of the Habsburg court, were Freemasons. The most significant connection was Emperor Joseph II himself, who became a Freemason during his early travels. His brother, Leopold II, also had Masonic connections. This royal patronage gave Freemasonry a certain legitimacy and cachet within the Habsburg realms, especially in Vienna and Prague. The lodges were places where men from different social strata, bound by shared ideals and secret rituals, could meet on a supposedly equal footing, discussing ideas that might have been too sensitive for public discourse. The influence of Freemasonry on Joseph II's reign is particularly intriguing. His personal reform agenda, often characterized as enlightened absolutism, shared many ideological overlaps with Masonic ideals. Joseph II pursued religious tolerance, abolished serfdom, curtailed the power of the church, promoted education, and reformed the legal system, all goals that resonated deeply within the progressive lodges of his time. It is not unreasonable to suggest that his interactions with fellow Masons, the debates he witnessed within the lodges, and the intellectual currents flowing through these circles helped to shape his worldview and embolden his reformist zeal. Consider Ignaz von Born, a celebrated scientist, mineralogist, and a leading figure in the Viennese Masonic scene. He was a close confidant of Joseph II and a prominent advocate for the Enlightenment. Born was the master of the True Concord Lodge in Vienna, which counted many influential figures among its members, including court officials, scholars, and artists. One might imagine Joseph II, perhaps incognito or during a private visit, attending a lodge meeting where Born or other prominent Masons eloquently articulated arguments for press freedom, the reform of the legal code, or the benefits of religious pluralism. These discussions, cloaked in Masonic secrecy and brotherhood, could have directly influenced the emperor's legislative initiatives. However, the relationship between the Habsburg monarchy and Freemasonry was far from straightforward. While Joseph II might have been sympathetic to many Masonic ideals, he was still an absolute monarch. He viewed the independent organization of secret societies with suspicion. In 1785, he issued a decree to regulate and centralize all Masonic lodges, effectively bringing them under state control and reducing their number. This was his attempt to harness the reformist energy of Freemasonry, while simultaneously preventing it from becoming a source of independent political power or dissent. He wanted enlightenment, but on his own terms. Following the French Revolution in 1789, the perception of Freemasonry shifted dramatically across Europe. What was once seen as a benign intellectual club was now increasingly viewed with suspicion. Often blamed for revolutionary plots and regicide, conservative elements within the Habsburg court, particularly under Leopold II and his successor, Francis I, saw Freemasonry as a dangerous breeding ground for sedition and radical republicanism. This fear was greatly amplified by the exposure of the Illuminati, whose members often overlapped with Freemasonry. Emperor Francis I, a staunch traditionalist, cracked down severely on all secret societies, including Freemasonry. Lodges were suppressed, members were spied upon, and even mere association could lead to imprisonment or ruin. The very secrecy that once made Freemasonry appealing now made it a target. The the vibrant intellectual life that flourished in the Viennese lodges was driven underground or extinguished entirely. This shift reflects the changing political climate and the Habsburgs' increasing authoritarian response to the perceived threat of revolutionary ideas, often projected onto secret societies. Despite these crackdowns, the influence of Freemasonry on the Habsburg Empire remained. Many former Masons continued to hold influential positions in government, military, and academia, carrying with them the ideals of their former lodges. The legacy of Masonic thought, particularly its emphasis on reason, tolerance, and human brotherhood, persisted in the intellectual currents of the empire, even if overtly Masonic activities were suppressed. The story of Freemasonry and the Habsburg court is a complex tale of attraction and repulsion. It shows how a powerful, influential secret society could both inspire a monarch to undertake radical reforms and later become the object of intense suspicion and suppression. It demonstrates the double-edged sword of hidden networks, providing a platform for progressive ideas, but also becoming a convenient scapegoat for revolutionary anxieties. The whispers of Masonic influence, whether through direct action or through the shaping of intellectual currents, undeniably left a lasting and indelible mark on the political and cultural landscape of the Habsburg Empire.